What's going on, guys? My name is Chris Reed. I am the Director of Program Design for Tatum Human Performance, and today we're going to talk a little bit about our team assessment. So at THP, every single person who comes through our doors is going to get an assessment. It's a really in-depth look at how they move, where their challenges are, and how we can help them. We also do this on the team level, so it's a little less in-depth because we have to make sure that we're getting a ton of kids or athletes through the assessment, but it still gives us a ton of information in terms of what we're going to do, how we're going to train them, and how we're going to assess any challenges that team may face as a whole. So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about the why, how, and what of these team assessments, and we're going to go through kind of each test and kind of what it means. And you may see your athletes going through these tests, so you want to know exactly what we're testing, what we're looking for, and how they can score the best. So let's get into it. We first start with our movement assessment. So it's 5 simple movements. These are bread and butter movements that everyone should be able to do. I'm going to give us an idea of if they're lacking mobility, lacking stability, lacking motor control. So the first one we start with is an overhead deep squat. So your athlete will have a bar across up above their head, and they're going to go ahead and squat down as far as they can. And what we're looking for is, can they actually keep their trunk upright? Can their shoulders maintain that mobility up top and stability? And can they actually achieve a full squat? It gives us a really in-depth look at the whole body performing a movement all at once. So we're not breaking anything down. We're saying, can the whole body do something at once? Can your brain control all that? Then we go on to single leg balance. So single leg balance, we start on one foot. This comes up, and we're just gonna have them close their eyes, and they're gonna try to balance for as long as they can. What that does is it tells us, can they stack their joints from their feet all the way up to their shoulders, and without the aid of vision, can they balance themselves through the feet, through the core, through the hip, and all the way up and down the chain. Gives us an idea between right and left if there's any asymmetries there. And it also lets us see, can they actually achieve this position, right? This is the position for jumping, hopping, skipping, running, things like that. So it's more of an acceleration test. Okay, then we go into some of our mobility tests. So we have the shoulder mobility test. You may see them with feet together, arms out wide, and have their hands in fists, and they're going to try to get their hands as close together as possible. So what we're asking the body to do is actually opposite things. We're asking this arm to externally rotate and come across, this one to internally rotate and come across. So do we have full control of the entire shoulder joint? So mobility is what we need before we can even talk about stability, strength, motor control, athleticism, anything. If we don't have that mobility, it's really hard to train the right way. So you'll see them go on the right and the left, and then they may even do a little clearance test to make sure that we don't have any pain with those movements. Now, that's our upper body mobility screen. From there, we go to a lower body mobility screen. Super simple. It is just a toe touch. So you'll see them move to the side. They're going to reach for the sky. They're going to come down, trying to touch their toes the best they can, and then come back up. So what we get to see is, can they actually lock these legs out, and can they get into a posterior hip shift, which basically is a prerequisite for deadlifting, for a lot of athletic movements coming forward and backward. So can they actually even get to that position? And it also shows us, can they lengthen this whole side, lower body mobility, right? If they have a tough time getting into this position, how are they going to deadlift? So we can then train or change their training program slightly if we need to. And the last one we have after that is a trunk stability push-up. So we looked at mobility of the upper body, the lower body, we looked if they can put it all together, and single leg balance. Now we're gonna look, can they lock this core up and push through the upper body? So you'll see it look a lot like a push-up. We position their hands in different areas to give them higher or lower scores. And basically, if they can get as far up and away as possible and still hold this core together, that means they have a really strong trunk. So what we see with a lot of youth athletes is that this tends to not turn on when we want it to, and so they're actually lacking a lot of power connection from lower body to upper body. So that's our movement test, and a lot of times you'll get a movement score. So looking at the top score, we'll see what your score is, see where you level out, and then you'll get a score for the full movement assessment. Now, after that, we move to the fun stuff. We move to the athleticism test. So we'll start it with grip strength. So with grip strength, we're looking at a dominant hand. So if I'm a righty, this is my dominant hand, I'm gonna grab a little contraption, I'm gonna squeeze it as hard as I can, okay? That's gonna give me a number in PSIs. Now for ladies, for males, and different ages, we have different norms. And for those norms, we're gonna look at how close are they to the norm. Now, the movement stuff, that's universal. There is no, different norms for men, women, or different ages. We see a lot of different trends with that type of movement assessment, but there's no different norms. When we get to the athleticism, that's all norm based. So for instance, a 17-year-old female, she's gonna wanna have 88 PSI in her dominant hand. So if she's at 70, that's a little bit low for the norm. So we wanna work up. From there, that's a really good gross gross strength test. Looks at the whole body strength output, really quick way to assess, do we have total body strength? We move to more of our upper body power test. So we go to a med ball chest pass. With this test, they'll be seated. They're gonna have a med ball according to sex and then according to age, and they're gonna hold it out in front, lean back, and throw it as hard as they can, as far as they can, and we're gonna go ahead and track it to the nearest half foot. From there, again, we're comparing it to a norm, okay? So for an 18-year-old female, it might be 20 feet. If they go 21 feet, they're above the norm, okay, which is a good thing. So that one, we're looking at strict upper body power. From there, we get into our change of direction, or our 5-10-5s. And so with that, what we're looking at is, can they start in the middle, and on a reaction, can they run 5 yards to the left, touch a cone, run 10 yards to the right, touch a cone, and then come back through the middle. So we're gonna do this to the left first and then to the right. So what this does is it gives us an idea of, are individual athletes slower to the left or slower to the right, and do they meet the norm for their age, for their sport, and for their sex. So with that, we also get to identify, asymmetries for the team. It may turn out that a lot of the team is slower to the right, so we may train them a little bit more on that first step to the right. So it looks at, can they accelerate off the block? Can they decelerate and change direction? Can they accelerate again, decel, and then come through? So it's really sport specific. From there, we've got our vertical jump test. Our vertical jump basically is just what it sounds like. They're gonna be on what we call a just jump mat. They're gonna throw down and jump as high as they can in the air. And what we're looking at is, how high do their feet get off the ground? Again, there's norms for different sports and for different athletes. So at THP, we'll normally norm it out by the age, even though across different sports, the sport might demand different things. For instance, golf may require a lower vertical jump than something like football or basketball. But with that being said, we have an idea of exactly where your athlete should be regardless of sport based on their age. So what we'll look at is how high they jump compared to the norm, and then we'll also look at how high they jump with their hands on their hips. So you take the arms out of the equation, we should see a 15% drop in that number. If we see anything higher or lower, it kind of gives us an indication of what they might be missing to help that connection. From there, we have one test left. It's our linear speed test. Okay, so this one, they are just running as fast as they can straight down the line, and we get a time at 10 yards and 20 yards. So the 10-yard time, and this is all in one run, tells us, can they go from zero to 100 as fast as possible, right? How quickly can they get out of the block from a dead stop? Now the 10 to 20 yard time, where they're total 20, tells us, can they actually continue accelerating while they have some momentum? Can they pick it up on the back end? So what this tells us is, do we need more first step, more reaction time, more power movements to get them out of the block? Or do we need more later acceleration and more speed work? For a sport like soccer, you may have a really good first step, but get burned once you're running for more than 20 yards, right? Whereas it could be the opposite for other people, where they have a really slow first step, but they catch people in the back half. So if we know this information, then we can change the training up to make sure any challenge a team faces, we're gonna address that. And anything they're really good at, we're gonna keep them really good at that. And we're gonna make sure that we're still giving them dosage to go through it. So that's really the what. Now the how is, it's gonna happen in a performance center, and it's gonna be rapid fire, okay? These athletes they're gonna come in, they're gonna sign in, they're gonna go through all these tests pretty quickly. We'll make sure they're adequately warm. And then at the end of it, they're gonna have data available for them to go ahead and look and see where they compare on the scale. And normally what we'll look at is a red, yellow, or green. Green meaning you are at the norm, yellow means you're above average but not optimal, and then red means we're at average or below average. So that's kind of how it'll happen. It all happens in about an hour, and you have a ton of information, so do we, to train that specific team. Now, why do we do it? We do it because we don't want to just be throwing stuff at a wall and hoping stuff sticks, right? We want to make sure we know exactly what we want to do for each specific team. Now, it may turn out that a lot of teams have similar trends and will benefit from a similar style of training, and that's okay. Sometimes you just need to really hammer the fundamentals, but as you get more sport specific and older, your training for your your team should start to go towards those sport-specific demands and really address the challenges you face. So that's what we use our athleticism screen for and our movement screen for. We want to make sure that we're getting all of our teams dialed in exactly how they need to be. And when it comes down to it, the better assessment data we have on the front end, the better training plan we can make, and the better athletic ability improvements your athlete can make.